This episode is brought to you by Endless Comics, Games, and Cards. Whether you are a dedicated Wednesday warrior or looking for the latest drop of TCG or sports cards, Endless Comics, Games, and Cards has you covered. While Endless is known for their large collection of both single-issue comics and their library of graphic novels, not to mention their monthly comic book club, they also stay fully stocked with singles and sealed product for Magic the Gathering, Pokemon, Yu-Gi-Oh!, and many, many more. What's the best part? You can set up your pull list online at endlesscgc.com and they will send your new books to you. So head over to endlesscgc.com or check them out on social media at endlesscgc.
Hey, this is Scott Snyder, the writer of American Vampire, Barnstormers, Witches, White Boat, and Batman, lots of other comics, and you are listening to the best comic podcast around, the Oblivion Bar Podcast.
Welcome to the Oblivion Bar Podcast with your host, Chris Hacker and Aaron Knowles.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Oblivion Bar Podcast. I'm, of course, Chris Hacker. I'm actually here live at Downtown Comics here in downtown Indianapolis. It is the week of Gen Con, and if you hear us sort of talking lightly, it's because we're trying not to bother the entire shop. We're already making them turn off their music and doing all the things, so we appreciate them for doing that. We'll try our best to sort of say very respectful in that sense. But I'm, of course, as you probably saw as you clicked on the episode, I'm joined by the director, the producer, all the cool things, the crowdfunder, all the things of Shopping for Superman, Wes Eastin. Thank you so much for joining me here today, Wes.
Thanks for having me, Chris.
Absolutely. So you're in town this week here in Indianapolis for Gen Con.
Right.
Right. You were at San Diego the week before that.
Yes.
Okay. So I guess my first question, and this is obviously total gotcha journalism. Okay. Are you more of a board gamer? Are you more of a comic reader? Where's your love truly lie?
Oh boy. If it meant an uptick in sales, then I'm the biggest board gamer that ever existed.
Sure.
In reality, I have a very tangential relationship with board gaming. I am contrarian by nature. So when someone says we're going to take out a game and it's going to take 30 minutes for you to learn, I say, no, I'm not. I'm going to drink and judge you for the lamest party ever. But I'm very wrong because walking through the showroom, I saw some super crazy, amazing stuff that's like just beyond what I would have expected for a board game to be.
Sure.
Like really involved in beautiful stuff.
Yeah. I have about 10 to 12 board games at home that I've never played because, I've bought like the Marvel Heroes game. There's the DC Deck Builder. There's some Resident Evil crowdfunding games. And I just haven't found anyone in my close-knit friend group that would be willing to sit down for 8 to 10 hours to play that RPG. So it's nice to know that there are folks like me out there like you who, if it takes more than 12 minutes to explain a game, I lose interest and I'd rather just go take a shot of Fireball or something.
Yeah. We could definitely, it gets more interesting once like, okay, I'll try and learn this now. Like Catan, someone said, we're going to play that and said, I would rather play Civ alone
Sure.
than this, I think.
Yeah. Well, let me ask you this one more board game question before we get to Shopping with Superman. Have you ever played Splendor?
I don't think so.
It's a sort of it's a gem based like resource game where you have to like collect a certain amount of gems, and then once you get to 15, you win. It's obviously more intricate than that. I'm explaining it terribly, but if you ever get a chance, definitely check out Splendor while you're there at Gen Con this weekend here in Indianapolis. There's two versions. I want to say there's the normal version, and then there's also a Marvel Thanos version where obviously collect the Infinity Stones instead of the normal gems. So it's my favorite board game of all time. It's super easy to learn. It's very quick. I would say games last, no longer than 20 minutes per game.
Okay.
It's super fun. So everyone listening and Wes, check out Splendor. Really great. So, yeah. So let's talk about why you're actually here. Again, as we said, you were at San Diego Comic-Con last week promoting Shopping for Superman, which is your documentary, sort of, I would say more of a love letter to the local comic book shop, a place that I think all of us sort of find to be a safe haven, a place of community, fellowship, all those good things. Some of us have even had the fortune of working at one, like myself. I've worked at the Fancy Shop in St. Charles, Missouri. And believe it or not, we are sitting currently in a Downtown Comics. I once worked at a Downtown Comics, but it was the West Side, which I think is no longer around. Mm-hmm. So I'm going to shift it over to you. I'm going to ask you just give sort of a brief overview of, your history in filmmaking. I know it's maybe a big question, but
Sure.
sort of like your history in filmmaking. And then also, what was like the defining moment that made you decide to start working on Shopping for Superman?
Those are all great questions. So I started as a filmmaker actually in Atlanta, Georgia. I went to school at Georgia State University. I very much wanted to be a writer coming out of high school. I wanted to do the thing that is the key to making the film. You know what I mean? And when I graduated, I had spent a lot of time as a theater minor and took that experience over to Turner Broadcasting. So I joke with my wife; she's very much into sports. I'm not, but I would work around Shaq and the team for like NBA on TNT.
Yeah,
and I would say, "Well, Shaquille O'Neal and I were colleagues. We were coworkers." And she said, "Could he point you out of a crowd?" Like, well, he wouldn't do that. Shaq doesn't like to point.
Right. He'd be pointing down anyway.
Exactly. So. Yeah, he's a mammoth of a man. He's so huge. But from there, the film scene in Atlanta was really taking off. And so I was able to work on a lot of feature films as a day player, but I realized I'd be doing a lot of schlepping cable around. And that there's nothing wrong with that, but my back and my knees disagree.
Sure.
And I still wanted to be more involved with the creative aspects. And I just didn't see a faster route to that through being a grip or an electrician, more an electrician than a grip. So I moved to the West Coast, and when I did that, all of my friends are laughing because they built Pinewood Studios in Fayetteville, Georgia, down the street from Easton Road. Like my parents are saying, they're building a studio down the street from where you grew up, and I'm saying, well, we don't just stand around in the studio.
Right.
They're empty until someone rents it, and then they did Ant-Man and Guardians of the Galaxy there.
Yeah.
By the time I got to Los Angeles, Guardians premiered the day I moved in to my apartment, and all my friends worked on all of the Marvel movies, and I was out there saying, I'll do whatever you want, mister, for $75. And to be clear, that means, light or, shoot whatever.
Sure.
It was so hard to kind of start over in Los Angeles. But I managed to get some work as a director in a comedy space for Ray William Johnson. He had a YouTube channel for a while.
=3, right?
=3, man.
I remember those days. I'm old enough to remember that.
Oh, wow. Yeah. Well, I guess I'm the angel of death because while I was there, he said, I'm kind of sick of doing it this way with all these people. I'm just going to shutter all of this and make quick, like easily consumed pieces. And he's still doing great. And so I moved on to marketing and worked for Newegg Computers. And while I was actually at Ray's studio, I got the idea that I wanted to make a feature about something that I really cared about. And comic shops have always been that keystone in my life as far back as I can remember. I found the first comic book shop in a Yellow Pages.
Sure.
And said, wait, this is a thing? I'd been reading comics from the newsstand, the pharmacy, the grocery store, wherever I could get my hands on them. And then
can I quickly interject?
Sure.
Just for all the young listeners out there, the Yellow Pages was a section in what was called a phone book. And that was usually where you put ads or job opportunities and so on. So sorry, go ahead, Wes. Continue on.
They need that context. It's like, why is the book yellow? That's
Yeah,
weird.
right.
Yeah. So anyway, sorry, I lost my place there just trying to think of the Yellow Pages, like how crucial that was to everything. But going into a comic book shop, I saw it went from I knew about Batman, I knew about Superman, Spider-Man, everything we knew in the social conscience.
Right.
And then I found more. I saw a poster for this guy made out of rock called Concrete. I saw this book called Strangers in Paradise. And it didn't look action-packed. It was two ladies on the cover. It just made me wonder, like, people read this?
Yeah.
Who's this Deadpool guy? Like, suddenly there were just all these possibilities in comics. And I started collecting all the Wolverines that I'd ever wanted and never read. And it was fantastic. The comic shop was always the place where, as a nerdy kid who loved to read, I didn't always get along with people at school because, sports are cool, reading is lame. That was the notion in the 90s anyway. And going to a comic book store, I had a shorthand with anyone I encountered, mostly adults too, which was strange. I'm used to it being a children's medium. And then you see adults coming in buying some book called Gen 13 or teens buying books that are like tailor-made for their demo, whereas everything I'd read was made for a kiddo. And the habit just kind of stuck because everywhere I've lived, I've found the comic book shop. When I travel with my wife now, she rolls her eyes because I was like, oh, there's a shop if we go around this corner, and I'll try and spend a few bucks just to walk in and see it because it's one of the few comic shops are one of the few businesses that we have that are not homogenized in any way. when you have when you think of a comic book store, you're thinking of an experience that's very, for the most part, very unique to your part of town where you live.
Mm-hmm.
It's not going to necessarily be the same throughout the country.
Yeah, absolutely. You're so right. I think just to sort of speak on what you mentioned there a moment ago, it feels almost like necessary. It feels like you're doing your part when you go into a comic shop. And I think listeners will tell you this. My partner, Olivia, will tell you this. I have too many books. I've got around 1,400 trades in total. So too many as is. But I feel compelled to buy something when I go to a comic shop just because I want to support their venture and keep places like this alive, a place of community, a place where this still exists in a world that is very rapidly transitioning to a digital age.
Yeah.
And that's not just including the shop itself, the brick and mortar, but also comics as a whole. I mean, being at San Diego last week, it feels like there's this rising tide of a digital first sort of approach with publishers, which is really scary and honestly something that I hope never truly happens. But it feels like it's it's our responsibility to participate in this thing called, brick and mortar comic shops.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So,
well, the social aspect is extremely important, I think, now more than ever. But also, when you talk about the digital side, it's interesting because from, I want to say, the late 80s till maybe less than a decade ago, the comics industry was synonymous with comic shops.
Mm-hmm.
Forget movies, TV, all the, other IP that's out there. Comic shops and comic books were one and the same. And now with the digital front, I mean, great for the industry as a whole. Artists, writers, they need to eat too.
Right.
But the fact that a lot of people have been keeping up with their comics digitally, I don't think there's anything entirely wrong with that. But it is kind of this strange, like, it's not a dangerous spot or anything. It's just the collector aspect of comics. I don't know if it'll ever go away,
Mm-hmm.
but the question I've asked a number of people, are we siphoning readers with digital from the comic book shop, or are we making comics more available, more ubiquitous, and more of interest to people that possibly wouldn't necessarily go into a comic shop? Because if you think about, again, going back to the 80s and 90s, one of the things that I love is the evolution of most shops. The stores I went into, I'll call it gatekeeper attitude of, oh, you say you're a fan of comics, 9-year-old boy. Yes. Tell me what happened in issue whatever.
Oh, really?
What happened sometimes. Or that the people weren't always, social butterflies.
Sure.
But they ran the store and they always had their books on the shelf when they were supposed to. So it fed the beast in all of us that were in there. We didn't necessarily need our butts kissed when we walked through the door. But if you go to most shops now, people greet you when you walk in. They work to actually sort of help you refine your pull list, or, what are you looking for today? I can actually give you some recommendations.
Yeah, sort of curate it.
Exactly. And
right.
You don't get that through Amazon. You don't get that through Comixology, any of these digital applications. They may say, okay, you read this by Brian K. Vaughan. Here's another Brian K. Vaughan book.
Right.
And that's not, Pride is a great book, but it doesn't necessarily mean that because I liked Pride, I'm going to love Saga.
Right. Absolutely. Yeah. And I want to take a step back just a little bit. I know we're getting into this sort of conversation about the comic shop, which I absolutely love, but I do want to sort of key in on the process that you went through in order to make this love letter to, our LCS. So again, you crowdfunded this, and we talked about it a little bit before the recording. I was of course a backer of that. As soon as I saw Shopping for Superman, it was an immediate fund. I think I might have backed whatever tier that gets you the actual Blu-ray. So I can't remember off the top of my head which one that actually is, but very excited to eventually get that. And I guess let me back up a little bit here. Going back to San Diego, because I do want to touch on this. You mentioned that you won an award at San Diego for this?
Yeah. We won Best Documentary at San Diego Comic-Con.
Wow.
Their film
just
fest.
Overall documentary. Yeah. Not just comics related, but every documentary. Wow.
No asterisks.
That's amazing. Great. That's awesome. Yeah. What was that moment for you? How did that feel for you in that moment to be up against those other films? And then also, I guess it's got to be sort of full circle, from the moment you started creating this to now winning awards at the Comic-Con.
What's crazy to me is 10 years ago, I was a sound recordist for a documentary called Animated Life, or Floyd Norman, An Animated Life. It's about this guy. He's amazing. He was an art director for Disney. I could go into his whole career, but this is about me. And
stop giving other people credit.
Yeah, exactly. I followed him around Comic-Con, interviewed him with the director, Michael, and it was an amazing experience to be working at Comic-Con, but I wasn't there to enjoy it. It was a work day. And then 10 years later, I'm back at Comic-Con as a guest and winning an award for a movie. Like, I should have words for it, and I don't mean to sound schmaltzy or whatever, but it was that it was very emotional, and it hit like a ton of bricks.
Sure.
And I tried to like thank everyone in the crowd, and I just kept losing my words. My mind kept going blank. It felt amazing to be recognized and appreciated by the community that I tried to tailor this for. I wanted everyone to like it, but I knew that it was definitely going to be for a specific group of people more than anyone else.
Sure. Now, I want to transition a little bit to the actual crowdfunding part of it. Now, you mentioned there's an intro video on the actual Kickstarter page where you sort of highlight that like you had most of, if not the majority of this finished at one point, and you felt like you were near the finish line and you really wanted to get this in the hands of, distributors, and also add some extra graphics and other things like that you really wanted to make this movie special. Sort of go through the process of crowdfunding a film. And is it something that you would ever recommend to people who also maybe either want to make film or even make comics? I know that's really popular on Kickstarter as well.
Short answer, no.
Okay.
Long answer, nope.
For sure.
Kidding. It's a whole new skill set that I never really planned for.
Sure.
When I started making the movie, I thought very naively, like, I can do this. I don't know if that's Dunning-Kruger or not, but I looked at it and said, I make movies for a living. I make TV shows for a living. This is going to be cake. And then I realized when you're doing all of it, you're kind of Dick Van Dyke and Mary Poppins, where you're playing all the instruments at once. It can be maddening, and the biggest limiting factor is money. I mean, until I'll give the pandemic credit, we have the ability now through Zoom and those applications to actually have video chats. So I can be anywhere in the country and hire a local shooter, and he can pipe the video from his camera directly into Zoom, and I can see what he's seeing. I can hear what he's hearing and say, great, I don't have to get on a plane with all my stuff, trying to save as much money as possible, packing my clothes in my tripod bag.
Sure.
And that was the case for a lot of the time. And thankfully, Dan Garino came out with his book about the comic shop while I was working on this, and I just tore through that thing. I read it a couple of times, and then I reached out to him. He was gracious. I flew out to Columbus. Strangely enough, I now live in Ohio, and I interviewed him at the Laughing Ogre, which is now my comic book store. But it was this odd. Everything fell into place. I don't believe in woo-woo whatever stuff, but everything just kind of fell into place when it needed to, because I wanted this thing done. It took about 10 years to get everything together.
Yeah.
The film's total budget is a little over $100,000. That isn't something I had in my pocket. And thankfully, I had shot so many elements that when I pieced it together on a timeline, I could say, okay, I have these gaps. Despite what you hear right now, listener, I do not like the word or And so there are so many cuts and moments where I say, okay, I need something that goes over this footage, because the person speaking would talk for a moment, say 6 times, or well, and as a viewer myself, when I watch or listen to anything, I'm just thinking, why didn't they take all of that out?
Right.
And so it became kind of a little more, sorry, that's a little look behind the, it's not an interesting look either, I don't think, but it's one of the reasons where I just had this need for footage. And I always, when you see the film, it's a very personal story for me. I've had people ask, like, why didn't you feature this cover of this book? And I'd say, because that book didn't mean to me what it means to you.
Sure.
There's a combination of film production. There's an addition of a little theatrical elements. And I tried to make something that was unique, because there are other documentaries about comic book shops and how hard this industry is on retailers. But I didn't see anything that spoke to me was a movie that I wanted to make. And so that's very much where this came from. The Kickstarter part, to get back to your question, was it wasn't a nightmare. I've been very lucky to know certain people who have taken some of these projects on, who gave me really good advice and really good counsel. Sometimes I didn't always follow it, but with the Kickstarter, I got very ambitious, and the person that I spoke with was saying, you're going to want to dial this in. You're not going to want to go crazy. Maybe think $20,000 is possible. Maybe shoot for 20. And I'm thinking 20 is nice, but I can't finish it for 20 because then I'm going to have to do another one of these.
Right.
And the people who donated are going to say, well, I already gave you my money. Now you need more of my money.
Yeah.
I don't like to waste people's time, and I don't want people to ever think I'm trying to take advantage of a situation. And so that's why we settled on the number that we did. And I'm blown away that we got there only because it is such a niche idea. And if someone types in Wes Eastin, I have a decent IMDb page, but nothing that I've directed at this scale. No other documentaries that I've directed, produced, written, edited. And so it was a lot of people, I think, taking on faith that I could do this
Sure.
and trying to convince them visually, like, trust me, I am doing everything I can to make this as good as possible. And the same is true of the Kickstarter. That's its own industry, though, actually. Kickstarter campaigns, there are people who you pay them X amount of dollars up front and then a percentage of the return, and they will help coordinate your whole look, feel, and everything. But the biggest downside to Kickstarter, I'll say, you lose so much money to Kickstarter, and you end up essentially paying their tax on what you raise. So you're paying tax on it. You're paying their tax for money you don't see. And it's a great service, but if you're aiming for, say, $50,000, you're not going to see $50,000.
You're going to need to raise like 80,000.
Exactly.
Yeah.
They're going to take a chunk. And then even the shipping that everyone paid for their rewards, they take a cut of that too. So I would have to overcharge shipping, overcharge for and it just feels, unless you have just a hole-in-one idea, you're going to come up short in some way unless you can raise way more than you actually need.
Sure. Yeah. So for the film, you obviously are traveling around, going to different comic shops, talking to folks within the industry. I'm just curious, and I know this probably could be a large question to ask on the spot. Are there a couple shops that sort of stand out in your mind as like shops that you will not only remember because of this venture that you're going through with shopping for Superman, but ones that when you're in town, wherever that shop may be, you're like, I'm going back to this shop and revisiting?
Oh, 100%.
Yeah.
My favorite store from having worked on this project is one that I fell in love with my first trip to New York, and that's Forbidden Planet. I walked in and just said, this is the vibe. This is the clubhouse that I've always wanted. Every inch of space has the coolest, newest, and oldest, like most interesting array of items, and they even tailor their store that way. You'll see it. It's the opening shot of the movie. Is at the time they had the Captain America shield where their door handles was split down the middle.
Very cool. Yeah,
it was really solid. I think now it might be the bat symbol, or It's been about a year since I was there, so I don't know what they're doing now. But anyway, and I don't want to butcher it. Cosmic Monkey in Portland, same idea. I walked in. I was there to interview for Books with Pictures. Love that store. It's designed to be an inclusive space for people who aren't traditional comics readers. Fantastic idea, fantastic store. But then I saw Cosmic down the road and said, oh, I'll poke my head in. And awesome. It wasn't, I wouldn't say they have more or less product than any other store I've been to, but the way it was laid out was considerate. The guys working the desk were very pleasant, even though we're all still wearing our masks because COVID's happening.
Sure.
But it felt like the store for me. And I know for most people out there, you get that vibe when you walk into a specific store and like, I want to shop here the rest of my life.
Right. Yeah. It's like I know for me, it's sort of a mixture of like the smell of old paper and, sort of the grimier the walls are, the better. More long boxes I see that are half held together, the better. Yeah. They usually have a lot of out of print trades. There's usually like old porcelain statues, like some Bowen statues from the 90s. It's got like a mixture, there's no like direct organization in the store, especially at like the front desk. There's certain things that when I walk in, and it's immediate green flag for me that like, okay, I've found a great local comic shop. Now, I'm not saying that comic shops that don't have all that aren't great shops, but like generally those are like very obvious signs that, I'm going to have a good time in here for the next 90 minutes to 3 hours.
And the store sort of tells you what it caters to by that effect.
Right.
There's a shop near Columbus that when you walk in, it's pretty bare bones in terms of decoration and storage layout, but it's very much a collector's paradise. When you walk in, you're going to see in the glass cabinets some awesome books at a reasonable price, nothing too insane. The owner is very matter of fact, very straightforward. And then you go to other shops where I think they saw enough movies in the 80s and 90s and they're like, I'm going to make it like so-and-so's bedroom from Gremlins, or,
Sure.
like
Yeah.
just saturate it with the culture.
It's going to look like the hideout from Monster Squad or something.
Exactly.
Yeah. So, I don't want to take up too much of your time, Wes. I appreciate you joining me here today, again, at Downtown Comics here in Indianapolis, just to chat about shopping for Superman. I'm so excited for you and for the documentary and all the success that you got there in San Diego, but also to actually be able to watch it at some point is something that I'm really excited for.
You are a backer, so
yeah.
You're getting. Is this a long con? Was the plan to get me here? Like, where's my movie?
Yeah, I was gonna rob you. When you walked in, you didn't have a bag or anything with you, so I was like, well, he probably doesn't have a DVD on him. I am waiting for the Blu-ray. I think that's what I'm mostly waiting for, because I don't know this. I don't mean to like put you on the spot here, but for the Blu-ray backers, is there going to be special features and commentaries from yourself or whomever?
That's actually what slowed me down a little bit.
Sure.
And subtitles through the distribution process. I have a company that's making the subtitles for me. I want to make sure that's included just because I'm paying so much for it. But also the special features, I want to do a director's commentary, which will be maddening because I hate hearing my own voice.
Sure.
Lucky you, everyone that's listening to me talk right now. But for me, not the favorite voice out there. The special features that I've been trying to put together, I want to have something that covers Comic-Con, because we shot a little video while we're doing that, and just sort of a the road so far kind of take. And it doesn't need to be crazy long, but I want to include something special for the people who value physical media in that way, because if you go to our YouTube channel, I've made derivative videos. One of the people I interviewed, Joe Field, he created Free Comic Book Day. He told me, you have some interviews with some people, A, that aren't with us anymore, and B, really cover a lot of bases that maybe you don't use in the movie. You should start cutting these down. And I'm thinking, you know how much work this has taken, Joe? You know how much of my life? My wife will walk past my office and be like, I thought you were done with that. Like, I'm never done with this. But
the mark of a true artist, right? Never done. Yeah.
In all seriousness, though, it's really important stuff what they're saying. If you really care about the history of the retail industry, there's some stuff you've never heard before, or if you have, that goes into greater detail with some of the voices that have been there from the beginning that made it happen. And I am working to get more of those out there for everybody else. But for people who are buying the Blu-ray, I want it, owning my own collection of videos, I want it to be like the way I treat my movies. Like, this goes on the shelf. It goes on the shelf here. I always know where it is because I value it. And it's not just what you find in the Walmart $2.99 bin or whatever. Like, I want it to mean something to have that in your home.
Oh, Wes, I knew that we were cut from the same cloth. As I was saying earlier from the trade, shameless brag, I also own just about 700 movies, physical movies as well. So, it is definitely one of those things that and part of the reason why I do that, and we don't have to talk about this too long, but part of the reason why I'm doing this is, and I think probably why you're also doing the actual physical release of the film, is because I think we've sort of lost our attachment to our media and to our entertainment. When everything's on streaming, we sort of just watch whatever's in front of us or whatever we already pay for. And when we own it, we have it. Like we can go and we can go watch Superbad, or we can go read Jeff Johns' Flash run, like, because I have it right here. I don't have to just read it or watch it because it's convenient to me. So I love the fact that you're doing the Blu-ray, and I love, again, this sort of, I'm trying to like full circle this whole conversation back to the power of the local comic book shop. I guess maybe the last question I'll ask you, because again, I don't want to take any more time for you and your Gen Con venture that you're here actually in town for. Is there a particular person within the documentary that you want listeners of this conversation to sort of key in on and think, wow, from your perspective, that was an incredible conversation, and it's one of the most memorable moments of making this film?
Oh, wow. I have to be honest. I've seen it so many times now that to ask a question about any part of it, I can only remember the parts that are flawed in any way.
Oh, sure.
I don't know how that sounds, honestly, but to give you a quick, Joe Ferrara, he runs Atlantis Fantasy World down in Santa Cruz, and that's famous for, it was in the Lost Boys movie. That's the comic book shop they're in. Joe is one of those voices. He has one of those voices, I should say, that whatever he says, you just want to sit and listen. And when I went to interview him, I was on my way to interview another gentleman, Bud Plant. He was part of the direct market back in the day, one of the distributors. So I'm driving up to see him, and I figured I'll pop into Joe's store. And we talked for about 5 hours.
Wow.
Just rolled the camera, and whatever he would say, I'd ask him to elaborate here or there. And I'd say, I'm so sorry for taking up so much of your time. He's like, oh, it's fine. I'm here, And we talked about everything from Star Trek to running the store and his experience with ordering comics back in the day and how fraught that would be. And it meant a lot to me at Comic-Con. I mean, a lot of the people who are in this movie, even people who represent locations that are in this movie, were at Comic-Con.
Yeah.
And Joe was there too. And I got to chat with him and catch up. And he saw me come and he said, oh, hey, Wes. I haven't seen him in 6 years.
Wow.
And he just knew me instantly. He said, I've seen the videos, the one of me. Is there more of that? And I said, yeah, I was going to make a second one. He's like, oh, you don't have to. I just, I'm curious what's in the movie versus what's on YouTube. And
sure,
he really cares about all of this.
Yeah. You'd be surprised. Again, interviewing folks for the Oblivion Bar, I can tell you that like, you think sometimes, oh, I'm taking too much of, Paul Pope's time, or I'm really talking off Michael Conrad's head about his book. But these folks want to talk about this stuff, and of course we want to stay cognizant of like taking too much of their time. I'm trying to do that right now with you. But like at the end of the day, you agreed to do this in the same way that they agreed to do, Shopping for Superman, because they want to get out all of these things, their experiences, their thoughts on that process, their, memories, good times, bad times, all the things. So,
well, that's at the core of why one of the things that kept me going is this is not hard for you and I to talk about this. And to talk with shop owners about shop owners will talk your ear off about the problems with distribution and this, that, and the other, and their experience, because they love it. I mean, it's not always the best day they're having, but they truly love talking about this sort of thing. And that's why I'm not saying the whole process was easy, but that aspect of it was always easy. I rarely had to, in one instance, I had to essentially sit there and ask a person, can you elaborate? I had to coax an answer out because they didn't love it the way every other shop owner I had met did.
Sure.
And it was evident just in the conversation. I try to romanticize things because it's an easy thing to romanticize, I think. And I said, so what got you to open your own store here and to stay in business for 20 years? And he just said, money. And I said, okay, I think that's our time.
And I've got lunch, everybody.
Right.
Let's go ahead and hit that.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, that's interesting. To hear anyone say that they got into comics for money is kind of like
it's insane.
It's like a juxtaposition to the art form. But okay, well, Wes, thank you so much for joining me here today. It truly is an honor to sit here and chat with you again. As I said earlier, I'll just sort of butter you up one last time.
Sure.
Very, very happy with what you've done with Shopping for Superman. Excited to eventually watch it. Excited for people to eventually get their hands on this, and then also just continue to shout that this thing is a thing from the megaphone. That's part of the reason why I wanted to have you here today, is so we could sort of put a spotlight on this for our listenership. While it may not be Joe Rogan numbers, we have, I think, a pretty nice listenership of folks who love comics. And, I want to make them aware of Shopping for Superman. So,
on that note, have you ever taken DMT?
DMT?
Sorry, I was thinking of Joe Rogan. Like, we get these numbers up.
No,
we're gonna start
I was going to offer
about
you some ayahuasca at some point, but it's totally up to you. It's your comfortability. So
that is fine.
Yeah.
Oh, well, I'm really terrible at this, so I'm gonna just push this in. Shoppingforsuperman.com. You can pre-order the movie, the Blu-ray. You can also see some of our progress so far. You can follow us on the socials. Just search for Shopping for Superman, and you'll see what we're up to right now.
How can people follow? If people want to follow you specifically, is that something you want to throw out there, or do you want people to just follow the Shopping for Superman socials and such?
I think you can find me if you type in Wes Eastin.
Sure.
My Facebook I keep private because occasionally I drink and post.
Sure.
And so the next day I'm like, why did I have a problem with that? Like I'm going to take that down.
You're drunk typing like Doomsday Clock was a good book.
Exactly. Well, the other day my wife was like, why are you asking about Benghazi? I'm like, did we ever figure it out? That was my question.
I just want to know, did we figure it out? Yeah.
Just stop, man.
Well, Wes, it's been great talking to you. I appreciate it. And we'll let you go back to Gen Con, enjoy yourself. And hopefully we can talk to you full form at some point down the road, possibly on the Oblivion Bar when you have some time once Shopping for Superman is officially out.
I'd love that.
All right, cool.
Thanks so much.